Hello again, and welcome back to another episode of Factory Fresh.
Welcome.
I'm Lee Bailie.
My name's Youssef Rahal.
And today we're going to do something a little bit different. Most weeks we talk about cars specifically, new releases, rumors, speculation, what's coming down the pipe, and we're going to do a lot more of that, just so our audience don't worry. We're not abandoning all the OEMs and their new cars that are coming. But this week we want to focus on something a little bit different that is something that I think a lot of our audience probably has dealt with unfortunately, in some way, shape, or form in there. If they've owned a car, this has been a concern. And we're talking, of course, about theft. And specifically the process, which is really pernicious. We were talking about this before I started recording, about how really kind of, like, all car theft is bad, but this is really next level stuff in my opinion. It's called re-VINning. Now, I'll be honest, I have heard of this kind of here and there in the past, but I took a bit of a deeper dive into it. And basically the TLDR here is, as I learned when I was researching the story, it's the process of taking a VIN, a vehicle identification number, which is the car's fingerprint. It's on the dash. It's on the frame near the door jamb where the car is manufactured.
Firewall, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's in a few different places where they put the fingerprint of the car, the VIN. The process involves taking a VIN from a legal car that is being exported and applying it to a car that has been stolen, so that it can then be passed off as a quote-unquote legal car in Canada or the United States. And how this happens basically is, apparently import data for other countries around the world, whether it's Europe, Asia, South America, South Africa, wherever, is available online. So it's what they call open source, meaning you don't need to pay for it. It's not behind a firewall. It's not encrypted. You can get this data of cars that are being imported in other countries, take those VINs, and then apply them to cars that have been stolen, and pass them off as if they were legal. And the problem is that police, insurance companies, dealers, we found a CBC story. CBC is a broadcaster here, a media company here in Canada. They did a story recently about how even dealers sometimes don't know that the cars that they are selling, not all of them or even a large percentage, but occasionally they're selling cars that are stolen because they have one of these these cars have been re-VInned and they don't know it. Yeah,
so another thing that I've also been seeing is that a lot of people are going to different so number one, obviously they're stealing the car. Let's say a Jeep Grand Cherokee, $50,000-$60,000 nice car. They're stealing it off somebody's driveway, going to any of like the big popular auctions, and they're buying a Jeep Grand Cherokee that burned to the ground, completely mangled, etc., etc. Buying that one, taking all the VIN plaques, VIN plates, windshield out, the one on the dash, etc., reprogramming the ECU to have the right VIN, all of that kind of stuff, because ECUs can read VINs. And they're doing that, and then they are fully but yeah, they're doing that, and then they are just selling the car to dealerships, trade-ins, stuff like that. Because a lot of dealerships, when buying and selling cars, something that I've realized is that they don't do a crazy amount of due diligence. So, for example, my brother had a 2018 Jeep Cherokee. Obviously not stolen. We had the car since it was like in 2019 in our family, whatever.
Right.
And he sold it to a company called Clutch, so it's pretty much like Carvana. They give you an offer online, they come with a truck, pick up your car, go pretty much, give you the money.
Yep.
So it was like a fairly expensive car. Sold it to them. The person, he submitted the online offer with just the VIN number and like the information about the car. Somebody came, did maybe a 4-minute check on the whole car, walked around it, made sure the interior was there, it didn't smell like cigarettes, gave him the check and left with the car. What was to say that all of those VINs weren't swapped though? He didn't check a single VIN, the person that came, etc. So I feel like a lot of dealerships are also doing that practice of not doing a good amount of due diligence on the car and not saying, oh wait, the font on that engraving on the firewall is different. Why is this clearly a 2019 BMW and it's a 2016? It's a pre-LCI post. So I feel like a lot of people aren't doing the proper due diligence in reference. to VIN swapping.
Well, that seems to be the case, absolutely. And so, what this CBC story that posted at the end of March, which serves as the basis for a lot of this information, and I subsequently dug into a bit further, is that these cars are being sometimes used to commit other crimes, but they're also being sold. As I mentioned, there's a dealer here in the Toronto area. He admitted, quite frankly, in the story that he's sold some stolen cars, not purposely, of course,
yeah, not intentionally,
but he didn't know. And so, here's the problem. Here's what really bothers me about this, apart from the fact that it's totally illegal and you shouldn't be doing it.
Obviously,
is that you as an owner, the police don't care if you bought it through a used dealer above board. If they find out that it's stolen, they will seize it and they'll void the insurance on it. So you can still face, that's here in Canada, obviously, you can still face consequences, even if you were completely unaware that the car you bought was stolen. So there is liability there, even if you were completely unwitting. I also, as I mentioned in our story, I dug into this a little bit more. There was an old FBI case from 2009 called Operation Dual Identity. 17 people in 2 states and Mexico, so Illinois, Florida, Mexico, they stole more than 1,000 cars, $25 million value roughly over a 20-year period. And they were arrested for a whole laundry list of charges. But one of the charges was re-VINning.
Yeah.
So taking VINs from stolen cars or taking VINs from legal cars, rather, and applying them to all these stolen cars.
Yep.
And this went on for more than 20 years before they were caught. So if our audience is wondering, is this something that is hard for police to catch and to track down and to stop? Yes.
100%.
It is. It can be they can fly under the radar quite easily. Now, further to this story, so the other big news of this story is here in Canada, we have the Canada Border Services Agency. It's like the Customs and Border Protection in the U.S. Basically, they are border guards. And so what they have done is they have access to export data. So they know which cars are being shipped abroad.
Yeah.
They're beginning to share that data on a limited basis, from what I understand, with Carfax, which is our audience probably knows about Carfax. You can get like vehicle history reports for
of course.
$50 or whatever the price is.
Yeah.
On any car, search the vehicle history.
Yeah.
It's something I've done.
Everybody
does that, right?
Yeah.
Before you buy a new car or a used car, rather, you want to see who's owned it.
Yep.
So, and this other company called it's French, so forgive my pronunciation. Equite Association. Basically, it's a industry watchdog, insurance industry watchdog. So those two companies are now getting limited access to CSBA data about which cars are going abroad. So the idea being they can then cross-reference and see which cars have been shipped overseas, see all those VINs, or see some of those VINs and some of that data, and then be able to cross-reference it with cars that are in the country that are clearly not, those VINs don't belong to those cars. And then those are the cars that have been stolen.
Another issue that's happening back to whether it be crash car, lesser model, etc. People are stealing cars off of driveways, putting the VIN off of the crashed car onto the good car that they just sold, putting in a shipping container and sending it overseas. That's another big issue that's happening.
Yep.
And car theft. So one of my friends that, like, just somebody I know, he bought or financed something like that, a 2024 Ford F-150.
Right.
He brought it home from the dealership on the Friday.
Right.
Went out on Friday night with his friends, whatever. Brought the car home Friday night, under 100 kilometers, brand new truck. Saturday morning, gone off his driveway. Day after he got it.
Wow.
Obviously, that's just a coincidence on timing, everything like that. But it was stolen the day after. And a lot of people do depend on their cars. For example, like if I wasn't to have a car, I couldn't get to school, I couldn't get to work.
Oh, yeah.
You would then, in turn, not have work to go back to, in turn, not being able to afford another car.
Yeah.
And it's a vicious cycle for a lot of people that don't have other means of transportation.
Sure. And this is, they say, according to the CBC report, the top 3 things that stolen cars are used for is illegal exporting, number 1, being parted out, number 2, and number 3 is re-VINning. So as we talked about, taking these stolen cars and putting legal VINs on them so that they will fly under the radar. And like I said, the reason this usually works is because the cars that are exported where those VINs are being taken from are not going to come back into the country.
No.
So you won't have two cars with the same VIN popping
Never.
up.
Nobody would
and
ever
so
know.
no one was, oh, wow, you bought this car from wherever, and we're going to assume you did all the paperwork, you insured it legally, you have all the documentation, and therefore it's a legal car.
Yeah.
On the surface.
Yep.
Yeah, and so and they were talking about how we have two police forces referenced in the story. One police force here in the Toronto area has investigated close to 300 re-VINed cars just in the past year. And some of these cars, just so our audience knows, we're not just talking about like sports cars and hot SUVs. We're talking about transport trucks. So it's the whole gamut of vehicles that are being re-VINed.
A very commonly form of transportation that's re-VINed is trailers, because trailers are wildly unregulated, but that's a different story. Like, I could come to your driveway, hitch up the trailer that's on your driveway to my truck, go to whatever ministry anywhere in Canada, the US, say, hey, I made a homemade trailer, register it, what's your VIN number, get a $15 Harbor Freight engraver, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You never see your trailer again. Your 5 by 8 foot black enclosed trailer, you see 10 of them a day driving down the street. You're never going to find it. I got a new trailer for free. Who insures a trailer? So that's another big issue that I've been seeing. But also, insurance companies, to combat the stolen car issue, what I've been seeing is you get a discount for having a tracker in your car. So my daily driver, I have an X5 diesel right now. I have I think it's like over 5 under 10% discount on my insurance for having an AirTag in my car.
Okay. Yeah.
And they said, do you have a tag tracker, steering wheel lock, whatever? I said, yes. I called them and said, hey, is an AirTag good? They said, yeah, sure. And I saved like $20-$30 a month for just having an AirTag hidden in my car.
Well, because I when I was researching this and I was writing this, the story's up on PASMAG.com for our audience can check that out. What's the recourse? And we have in Ontario, where we're in Toronto here, so the Ontario Motor Vehicle Industry Council regulates the sales of cars used in new cars in Ontario. They have a fund. If you buy the car through a licensed dealer and it is a re-VIN stolen car, there is now it didn't go into great detail as about what kind of compensation you can get. So maybe there is a little bit of compensation if the car is in fact seized because it turns out it was stolen. So if you bought it through a licensed used dealer, there is some compensation available to the owner. However, private sales are completely exempt, and so many people obviously buy and sell their cars privately. You're basically on your own. There's no compensation fund for those purchasers. So just to circle back to the CBSA, the border agency, is sharing some data on for these exported VINs to kind of cross-reference them with cars that are here legally to try and find the ones that have been re-VINed. The problem is we don't really know. It's pretty opaque. We don't really know, as the story indicates, we don't really know what data is being shared.
No.
There's a used car dealer association in Ontario. The executive is quoted here as saying, we don't really know. And he represents 5,000 dealers here in Ontario. They want access to this data as well for their members so that their dealers will know if any of the cars that come through their doors have been re-VINed. But the problem is the CBSA doesn't really want to share. They don't want to create a searchable database that's accessible by every Tom, Dick, and Harry in the car sales business because they're worried about the potential for that data to be brokered or shared with others, and it could lead to more fraud, right? So there's a limited amount of sharing here going on right now, and so hopefully the story kind of indicates, and my assumption is hopefully that over time we'll have a better way of tracking cars that have been re-VINed and people won't be having their cars seized. For sure.
It's really, the whole car theft epidemic is really crazy because somebody, for example, across the street from me had their Jeep stolen off their driveway. It happens. And another one segueing into that is the Kia boys.
Oh, yes. So
the funniest group of crime. Obviously, it's terrible what they're doing. They are ruining hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands. I don't know the number of lives because people rely on their cars. And if you're 06 Kia is your only way to get to work and pick up your kids from school and whatever. Like, if your car's stolen, that's truly like a big deal for a lot of people.
Just for the benefit of our viewers and listeners who may not be a Kia or Hyundai owner, what we're talking about here is prior to 2023 model year, most Kias and Hyundais did not have immobilizers. Immobilizer basically means the engine will not start if the key is not detected.
Yeah, it has its own code. They both have their own code, and if the codes don't match, they can't
So
start.
these cars, there's videos on YouTube, TikTok, all over Instagram where these cars are being ripped. They call it the Kia Challenge, basically to steal these cars in like 30 seconds or less.
So crazy.
And they just, we were talking about this before we came on air, that they don't want the car. It's more like a sport. They just do it for the hell
And
of
it's
it.
not for the money. It's not for the financial compensation. It's such a high risk with literally no reward.
And
So pretty much what they do is they break. I'm not teaching. This is for like, you can find this information generally on TikTok.
Internet. Yeah,
it's like a very common thing. You break the steering wheel column cover, which takes about 3 seconds with a flat screwdriver. You unplug something from the back of the ignition. You put literally an iPhone charger and you twist. The car turns on. That's it. No steering wheel lock. Nothing kicks in. It is a fully functioning car after any literal like 12-year-olds do it in 10 seconds or less.
So
like,
it won't
absurd.
surprise our listeners, given all this history, what the top 10 stolen cars in the United States looks like. I'll get to Canada in a minute. So we have Hyundai Elantra, Hyundai Sonata, Kia Optima. So the top 3 are all Hyundai Kia. Chevrolet Silverado 1500, Kia Soul, Honda Accord, Honda Civic, Kia Forte, Ford F-150, and Kia Sportage. That is half of the top 10 are Hyundai Kia vehicles. And like I said, they were flooding the market since the aughts and into the 2010s. And it wasn't until 2023 model year where immobilizers became widespread on these cars. And since then, the amount of, so from 23 to now, those cars are much less likely to be stolen. But that was like a long 20-year history where they were, like you said, stolen by, like a kid could do
Just
it.
a bunch of kids. And the issue with these quote-unquote average cars being stolen, not the higher-end cars, like I'm not talking about like enthusiast cars, stuff like that. For example, like call it a base model Honda Civic, a base model Toyota Corolla. I'm not talking about a GR Corolla, Civic Si Type R or whatever. I'm talking about just like the normal commuting car.
Yeah.
For example, if I was to ask somebody, one of my siblings who, like one of my sister, for example, who is by no means a car enthusiast, even in the slightest way.
Right.
Where is the VIN number on your car? What is a VIN number?
What is a VIN number? Yeah.
What is? I guarantee she wouldn't be able to answer it. And that's like, easily her Beetle could have been a stolen car 6 years ago. And the real version of her car could be in Ghana, maybe Sudan, maybe France. Like, you don't know. Like, it could be somewhere in the world that's not here.
Well, I have a personal story, which I'll get to in a minute. This is in my family, not me personally, but it's in my family. But so for Canada, our viewers in Canada, listeners in Canada, wondering what the top 10 in Canada is, here we go. This is for 2024. So the U.S. was 2024.
Stolen cars.
For 2024 in Canada, Toyota Highlander, Dodge Ram 1500, Lexus RX, Honda CRV, Toyota RAV4, Honda Civic, Jeep Wrangler, Land Rover, Range Rover, GMC, Chevrolet GMC Suburban / Yukon / Tahoe, and Chevrolet GMC Silverado / Sierra, which is a full-size pickup truck.
The craziest part about that list is that if you go on any drive anywhere that's more than 15 minutes, I guarantee you'll see one of each one of those cars.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, not the stolen ones, obviously, but just those year, make, and model. And clearly the thieves have a way of breaking into them, getting them started, and leaving with them. And you could throw a rock out of the window of anywhere in pretty much North America, to be honest, and you can hit one of those 10 cars.
So this folds into my personal story. My cousin and her husband lived in the Toronto area. They still do. And they bought a brand new, both these vehicles are brand new, by the way, Honda CRV. One was black, stolen out of their driveway. They replaced it with a graphite gray, like that dark, charcoal gray. CRV again, stolen out of the driveway again. For our listeners in the Toronto area, this is in Etobicoke, nice part of Etobicoke, which is the west part of
It's usually the nicer area that these car thefts happen.
Yeah, they're living in like a $3 million house. And and so
of course.
The insurance agent finally said to them, don't pick another Honda or Toyota, because what happens is those vehicles are very popular in the Middle East, the North America version, which they don't get. So Dubai and those countries in the Middle East don't get the CRV and the RAV4 that we get, and they're hot commodities there. And they just stick them in a sea can, and they don't part them out. They just ship them.
Yep.
So he said, don't buy another one of those, and don't, for the love of God, don't pick gray or black. Those are very popular colors because they're neutrals.
Yep.
So they picked a bright blue, which they still have, Audi Q3. Better immobilizer and anti-theft.
Yep.
And it's a color that will turn the thieves off. Has not been touched. They have since moved to, they live in Collingwood now, but they're nice homes in Collingwood too.
Yeah, of course.
And so they never worry about it at all. It's been years. And I said to I said to my cousin, I said, "So are we going to hang on to that Q3?" She's like, "Yeah, we're going to keep that car because it's almost the same color as the 20-year anniversary blue there.
Yep.
Bright blue, not attractive to thieves at all.
And also another issue is, for example, whoever in the Middle East, Europe, whoever that got those CRVs that they got stolen, they don't know that they're buying a stolen car.
Nope, they don't either.
They don't know anything. It's somebody in, somebody that's like kind of orchestrating all of it. From my research, isn't somebody in the country that the car's stolen from or the country of origin. They're in a completely third party,
they're like brokers.
You can't do anything about it kind of thing. They find the guy in the original destination.
Yep.
And they have their car stolen. One of my uncle's friends had the same. He lives in Toronto in a nicer area. 3 Range Rover SVR stolen in 6 months.
I believe it.
3.
I believe it.
They're very nice SVRs though.
I haven't had cars stolen out of my driveway, but I've had them broken into twice when I was living in the East End suburbs of Toronto. This was once was in Civic SI in the late 90s, and the other one was a old Honda Accord in the aughts. So they just wanted they took my CDs and they ripped out the head unit, but they didn't take the car. So I got lucky. But when I came out and the door was open, I'm like, I didn't leave the door open.
Yeah.
But it didn't have an immobilize. It didn't have fancy anti-theft.
Yeah. We had the same issue literally a few weeks ago. So my sister-in-law, her car was parked in the driveway. So like up north where I live, you don't really lock your cars, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like if you don't lock your car, if you leave your keys in it overnight, like you're fine kind of thing.
Right.
She wakes up in the morning, her wallet is gone out of the car, her sunglasses that were prescriptions. I'm not sure what they're doing with those. They can have them. And she had snacks in the car. She had a bag of chips and an oatmeal cookie. They just took the chips. They didn't take the oatmeal cookie.
Thieves
and
are
then
strange.
They tried to use the credit card at different gas stations in the area. So we're assuming it was like not an organized crime theft ring. We're assuming it was just a bunch of kids or a homeless person, something like that.
Yeah.
And then we kept watching where the card got declined, and my brother and I tried to find them.
Right.
Because she really liked those sunglasses.
Sure.
We didn't care about the wallet, whatever.
Sure.
And her Nexus card was in her wallet. Yeah.
Okay, so let's kind of bring this home a little bit here. So you may be wondering, what are the governments doing here in the U.S. and Canada to combat this? Well, I couldn't really find much in terms of national government programs in the United States, but in Canada, they passed something called the National Action Plan to Combat Auto Theft in May of 2024. That's a proposal to kind of make it more of a national approach to it, combating car theft. In terms of the numbers, like we're talking about $1.5 billion in claims costs from 2018 to 2023 in Canada. That's $1.5 billion Canadian. Ontario is the hardest hit market. More than $1 billion alone in Ontario. In the U.S., 1 million cars were stolen in 2024 nationwide. It's about a 41% increase from 2019 to 2023. The most popular states for car theft in the United States is California by a mile. It's more than double. Texas is second, but it's like almost 208,000 in California, 115,000 in Texas.
Wow, that's a big gap.
That's a lot. And then it drops to 46,000 in Florida, which is the third.
My car's in Florida right now, so we'll see what happens.
So, but anyway, I've tried to find more information. May of 2024 was almost a year ago. Have they moved the ball forward in terms of legislation and programs to combat theft from the federal level in Canada? I mean, the National Action Plan for Combating Auto, several steps. They want to install a mobile X-ray scanner in the GTA to help the CBSA with shipping containers, examining shipping containers, things like that. But in terms of the re-VINning, it's hard to track and it's hard to stop.
Impossible.
And so, as I said in my story on PASMAG.com, caveat emptor, which basically means buyer beware, and just do your due diligence. Try to get the car, because Carfax is getting this data.
Yep.
So try and use that. Scrutinize your purchases if you're using a used car dealer.
For
Make sure you investigate it as much as you can. And if you happen to be here in Ontario and it is stolen, a re-VINned car, and it does get seized, the OMVIC may provide some compensation if it was bought through a licensed dealer. If it's a private sale,
you're done.
You're kind of on your own.
Another couple things to definitely check on used cars that could be kind of red flags to get you signaling. If you're buying a car with 120,000 kilometers and the key looks literally brand new, you should definitely do a bit more due diligence into the car, because they can get new keys when they steal the cars. It's kind of how they do it.
Yep.
Nobody's coming to pickpocket your keys out of your purse at the mall.
No.
And also another very big one, if you are concerned that your car is stolen, the biggest due diligence that you could do is buy literally $20 OBD scanner off Amazon. They're a dime a dozen. They're literally $20. Ask a friend who has one, etc.
Right.
The biggest one that they don't change is in the ECU, because a lot of cars you cannot change the VIN in the ECU. On any modern car, pretty much after 2015, your ECU has the VIN number engraved in it. Your TCU, every single module has the VIN number in it.
Right.
BMW's back to E46s, I believe. So 2001, it's in the ECU. Depends on the car, obviously, but majority of new cars are. Plug in your OBD, read the VIN number. If it's the same one on the dash, chances are you're fine.
Yep.
If not, you're not going to catch it anyways.
Yeah, if the VINs don't match.
If your VIN starts with WPOCA versus JM1 FC, clearly there's going to be a discrepancy there, but that's the biggest one to check.
Just for our listeners, and W is Europe manufacturer, J is Japan, just so we know what we're talking about here. That's obviously a huge difference.
Yeah, but I'm saying like even if it's both starts in the same one, but your last 4 digits or checked it, like anything is off, like then run. But honestly, if all of your VINs check out, nothing looks tampered with, including the one in the ECU, there's literally nothing you could do past there.
That's right. And so we thought we would do this story because this is a large problem.
It's a prominent issue
in both countries and obviously around the world. And oftentimes there isn't a lot of recourse. Like I said, I couldn't find any programs specifically run by governments in the United States that combat this. We have some protections here in Canada. If you live in Ontario with OMVIC, and this program, this National Action Plan, which I assume we have an election coming up, so nothing is happening right now.
No.
But after the next election, whoever the government happens to be, this could get moved forward, and we could see something that covers the entire country. That's more of that involves provincial governments as well, and insurance companies. They need to be brought on board, and we'll see if the CBSA is willing to share more of this data, because they're the ones who know which VINs are leaving the country, and those are the ones that people are seizing upon to apply them to these cars, and that's the crux of it. And
one final note to everybody that's saying, oh, I drive an 04 Cavalier that's manual, nobody's stealing my car, I live out in the boonies. It affects all of us, because let's say your car's stolen. What happens to my insurance rate too? Your insurance rate doesn't go up $40,000 a year. Everybody's as a whole goes up.
Well, when I read that they're also stealing transport trucks, ladies and gentlemen, that means that it's not just your hot car. They're stealing cars they're stealing cars that people don't notice. I think that's part of these are like the vehicles I listed are what you might call normie vehicles. That's exactly why.
If you're stealing a Huracan, chances are you're going to find that Huracan. If you're stealing a black 2019 Toyota Corolla SE, chances are nobody's finding that.
Yeah. Or if you're stealing a Kenworth, who's going to notice, right?
Yeah.
Well, so anyway, the police in the report on the CBC story that I used as my source material, it talks about how it's all types of vehicles that are a target. So that pretty much covers it for this week's episode of Factory Fresh. Not a super
exciting,
positive
happy
topic, but it is something that exists. Our enthusiast community, certainly, I'm sure, viewers, listeners, send us some comments. Reach out to us on socials. Tell us your stories. What have you experienced? And what was your recourse? Like, what were you able to do? Were you able to get any money back? Were you able to? How were you able to resolve the problem if this happened to you? Let us know. Send us some put some comments in the video description, or reach out to us on socials.
If you have a very interesting car theft story that personally happened to you, somebody you know, reach out to us, because we would love to do a full story on it.
We'd like to follow up.
Yeah, we'd love to figure that out. It is honestly a very intriguing topic for a lot of people with stolen cars, stuff like that. So if you do have a very cool one, hit us up and we'd love to cover it.
So reach out to us. But thanks, guys, for tuning in. And we will see you next week on Factory Fresh.
Don't steal cars.